to introduce our featured speaker for tonight. And his name is Henry Kriegel. And I wrote some things down here, so I would try to get it right. But Henry Kriegel is the Deputy Director for Americans for Prosperity. For over 14 years, Henry has been on the front lines during the legislative sessions in Helena, fighting for lower taxes, for less government regulation, for school choice, for energy freedom, and policies that put Montana families and workers first. Henry is a proud first-generation American. His parents were Holocaust survivors who came to this country with nothing but grit, determination, and faith in the American dream. This legacy fuels Henry's passion and his freedom-fighting spirit. Before joining Americans for Prosperity, Henry ran a successful marketing company, hosted a local radio talk show, and helped co-found the Bozeman Tea Party and the Montana Tea Party Coalition. Whether he is testifying in the legislature, rallying grassroots conservatives, or enjoying Montana's great outdoors, hunting, biking, or fishing, Henry embodies the values of limited government, personal responsibility, and economic freedom that Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln championed. Please join me in giving a warm Custer County welcome to Henry Kriegel. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you. 1 second, I get set up here.
Good evening, everybody. Great to be here with you tonight. Right here in the heart of cattle country, right in the heart of real Montana. The kind of Montana that doesn't wait for permission from Helena to act, to get things done. I want to start by telling you who we are, because our opponents would rather you didn't know. Americans for Prosperity is a citizen-powered organization with a presence in 37 states across this great country. In Montana, we have been operational for more than 15 years. I've been a part of this group for nearly all of it. We have offices in all over the entire state of Montana. Billings, Bozeman, Great Falls, Helena, Hamilton, and Kalispell. Our staff are integrated in our communities throughout the state. Many were born and raised here. When I hear someone call us outside influence, I want to introduce them to our team because they are Montanans. They're Montana men and women working for Montana families. This is not outside influence, as our opponents would like you to believe. This is Montana leadership investing in Montana's future. But before I go any further, let me tell you a little bit about myself, because I believe that matters, and Representative Kometz touched on it a bit. I'm a proud first-generation American. My father arrived here. He survived the Holocaust, so did my mom. He fought with the Polish resistance. My mom survived 8 labor camps. They were the lone survivors of their respective families. They came to America because America meant something. It meant freedom. It meant opportunity. It meant that what happened to them in Europe could never happen here. I was born here, and I'm blessed every single day for that. I'm even more blessed that I found my way out to this great state of Montana, where I've lived here for over 30 years. When my parents came through Ellis Island, they were not looking for a handout. They were looking for a chance. They were looking for opportunity. They were looking for freedom, and America gave that to them. That is why I fight. That is the whole story right there in a nutshell. My political roots go back to Young Americans for Freedom at Columbia University, at a time when they somewhat tolerated freedom of speech. And I made sure they did when I was there. That's where I first understood that freedom is not automatic, that it has to be argued for, organized around, and defended. Those roots were rekindled in 2009 when I co-founded the Bozeman Tea Party. We held some of the greatest, and I mean this, some of the greatest, most legendary rallies in the state at that time. I still remember them. The energy was electric. Montanans were awake, they were angry, and they were ready to fight for their country. They're ready to oppose the big budgets of both George Bush and Barack Obama, and the big bank bailouts, and the likely increases in taxes. Many of these people who showed up at those rallies now serve in the state legislature, or have served in the past. The movement we built became the bench from which we still draw on today. I joined Americans for Prosperity because they had what the grassroots movement needed to go from rallies to results: infrastructure, funding, and technical support. The tools to make real impact, and impact is exactly what we have made. Now I'm proud to be part of Americans for Prosperity, and I want to take a moment to honor those who built what we have done here in the state of Montana. Our first state director, Scott Sales, former Speaker of the House and Senate President. He held the line through 16 years of Democrat rule in the governor's office, along with some faithful and strong allies. He needs to be commended for that. My second state director was the late, great Joe Balliet, one-of-a-kind man, who embodied the true spirit of freedom. We miss him dearly. Currently, I serve under the direction of Jesse Ramos, a young, bright, and fiercely principled visionary. Jesse cut his teeth in Missoula of all places, fighting corporate cronyism, bloated budgets, and tax increment financing, which is a corporate cronyism concept and program. If Jesse can stand firm in Missoula, we can stand firm anywhere in the state of Montana, and that's exactly what we intend to do at Americans for Prosperity. Our vision is simple and it's powerful. We believe that when government gets out of the way and when ordinary people have the right support, ordinary Montanans are capable of doing extraordinary things. That is a conviction, and it drives everything that we do. My role here at Americans for Prosperity, in part, is to help steward the resources entrusted to us to pursue that vision, so that Montanans can pursue their version of the American dream. Build a small business, raise a family, strengthen community, keep what they earn. We fight so those things remain possible today. We do this in two ways. First, we engage in accountability, informing voters how the representatives actually voted, sometimes in stark contrast to what they say publicly. We engage voters in the policy process. By doing this, we incentivize legislators to pay attention to our priorities. If they don't, they're usually greeted with some pretty hard-hitting mailers and digitals to their constituents to inform them how they actually voted. Secondly, completely separate and distinct from accountability, we engage in what we call express advocacy, endorsing and supporting candidates who are aligned with our policies, who can win, and whom we can help win their races. Let me be clear about where we are right now. We've engaged in an unprecedented level of accountability. We're now in primary races at a level I've never seen before in my time with AFP. 13 state, House, and Senate races. Montana is not the same state as it was 10, 15, 20, or 30 years ago when I arrived. The stakes are higher, the opposition is more organized, and so are we. It is no longer business as usual in Montana, and we're not alone in this act, in these activities. We're joined by groups like the State Accountability Project, the Montana Freedom Caucus, and other organizations that work with us in parallel to accomplish a policy majority. This coalition is growing, and you'll see more evidence of that in the days to come. The movement is real, and I'm happy to see that Miles City in Custer County is a part of that. I want to talk to you about accountability because I know some of you are uncomfortable with it, and I've spoken to some of you earlier tonight about how difficult it is to hold legislators whom you've known for maybe 20, 30 years and their families. It is uncomfortable. And I know many of us have friends in the legislature, people we've hunted with, gone to school with, broke bread with, interviewed on the radio, shared meetings with. And I get it, believe me, I do get it. And our team would much rather send out mailers thanking legislators for their good votes rather than sending out mailers and posting digital ads pointing out when they make bad votes. But here's the truth. Complaining at meetings, while bad votes go unchallenged, is not advocacy. It's really theater. It might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't really accomplish anything. So sitting around and complaining is not an option for Americans for Prosperity, and it shouldn't be an option for any one of us here. Our accountability campaigns are not hit jobs as they've been described by those who receive them. They are carefully designed. They're precisely worded. They are built on one thing only: how a legislator actually voted. That's the evidence we use, their actual votes. We just don't make this stuff up out of thin air. And we don't attack a person's character. That's crossing the line. And we don't go after their families. We report the votes. We inform voters, and then we let Montanans decide. So let me tell you what we held them accountable for. These are the votes that matter to us and to many of you here in the audience and many Montanans. The votes that tell you everything you need to know about where these elected officials are coming from. First off, HB 2, the largest spending increase in the history of Montana, sponsored by House Appropriations Chairman Lou Jones, authorized the largest spending increase of 13.5%. The legislature actually voted for an increase of 17%, but the governor vetoed some of the line items, brought it down a little bit. What was passed was twice the rate of inflation and 7 times the rate of population growth. That's the truth of the matter. They might say that you can't count the funds that were separated out into a growth and opportunity trust fund. Those monies will be spent and not returned to you.
Amen.
Spent on programs that most of us disagree with. Early childhood education, bolstering up a failed pension program, housing subsidies. These are not programs that you guys would likely support. We wouldn't support them. So when Montana families are tightening their belts, watching grocery bills rise, gas prices rise, watching their savings shrink, the state legislature did the opposite. They did the opposite. They spent more. And how did it pass? Because Representative Jones and his colleagues in the Solution Caucus teamed up with the Democrats, not to cut spending, not to hold the line, but to blow it up. You cannot grow government at that pace and walk into a room and claim that you're for cutting taxes. That's just ridiculous. The math doesn't work, and the voters deserve to know. HB 245, Medicaid expansion reauthorization. That's Obama's Medicaid expansion. It is an integral part of the Affordable Care Act. This extension covers single, able-bodied, childless adults slightly above the poverty level. It incentivizes poverty so they can qualify for this inferior form of health care and crowds out the program for which it was really intended, the aged and the infirm, at an cost 4 times greater than was initially estimated in 2015 when it was passed with the leadership under the leadership and sponsorship of then Representative Ed Buttrey, a Republican. It is bad economic policy and it's bad health policy, and we opposed it, and it passed because moderate Republicans teamed up with the Democrats and supported it. HB 231, the only supposed property tax relief bill that passed through the last session. It's a progressive property tax. sponsored by Lou Jones, provides what is likely one-time property tax relief to those who own a single home, while shifting the burden to owners of multiple homes. By the way, up to 40% of Montanans own more than one property. So you're not just, providing relief to those who live in the state of Montana. It also shifts the tax burden onto those who own large commercial properties. It is a tiered progressive tax scheme. It's a bad bill, and we opposed it, but they voted it in. So, you got the scorecard on the tables. We talked about that earlier. This represents how the legislators voted. 2025 was my third legislative session. I got to tell you, it was the least satisfying of all my sessions I've ever been a part of and worked at as a lead lobbyist. And I'm sure it was not very satisfying for those legislators in this room who served up there, because I talked to you about it during the session, about how disenchanted you were about it. Because right now, we might have a Republican majority, but we do not have a policy majority. And here's what it means in plain English. A number of Senate Republicans and House members teamed up with Democrats to form an alternative coalition, one that blocks conservative reforms. In fact, they bragged about it on CBS this morning. This was talked about and written about and reported about in major news dailies around the country. And this policy coalition undercut the conservatives in the legislature. And that's what we're dealing with. So, what did we score? In addition to the bills I've already mentioned, we scored several judicial reform bills, because we do believe that judicial candidates have the right of free association and should be allowed to declare the party affiliation, and the voters ought to know that, because if they are affiliated with the Republican Party, they're more likely to be a constitutionalist or a textualist, applying the law as it was intended when it was written, not legislating from the bench, because right now we have a very left-leaning judiciary. And those under the dome know, the progressives know, if they don't win in Helena, they can go judge shopping and win in the judiciary. Education freedom. We fought for a bill that would have created tax credits for parents, for individuals, for companies to support private and innovative education, so that the parents would have access and affordability to the kind of education that meets the needs of their child. It failed on third reading. Housing reform. You may not know this, but Montana is the most expensive housing market in the entire country when you factor in income. And we need to increase the supply of housing. And yet, we got a couple of small bills passed, but a majority of them didn't. HB 592, regulatory reform. We wanted more oversight and sunshine and accountability on the bureaucrats who write the regulations, because they have an economic impact on individuals and businesses. And we secured a win, but not a complete and total win. We don't have the full, what we call the REINS Act, which is being passed in states around the country. Regulations from the executive in need of scrutiny, whereby if a regulation would cost over a certain threshold, in Montana it was likely to be $2 million, that a full economic impact statement would need to be written up. And there would need to be an affirmative vote by the legislature for that rule to actually go into place. That is a check on the unelected bureaucracy, because we're concerned about future administrations. And we should have had the numbers to get that thing passed. And we did secure a large income tax cut, not quite the flat tax that we wanted to have done, but it's a step in the right direction. We'll come back in 2027 with hopefully a flat tax bill to lower income tax in the state. So, policy champions, those who scored above 90%, who showed up and voted right. Remember their names, and if you see them, thank them. Lee Deming, 100%. Caleb Hinkle, Kerry Seekins Crow, Greg Kometz, 96%. Braxton Mitchell, Mike Vinton, 96%. Jed Hinkle, 91%. Speaker Brandon Lair, 90%. Failing grades, those who scored under 70%. They include Linda Rexton, 69, Brad Barker, 65, Dave Beatty, 65, Ed Buttrey, 63, John Fitzpatrick, 60, Lou Jones, 58, Jordan Nicolakakis, 57, Ken Walsh, 55, Shelley Vance, 49, Melissa Nicolakakis, 48, Wendy McKinley, 41. Some of these folks scored lower than Democrats. The full scorecard, all the votes, starts on page 10 on the scorecards on YouTube. Please feel free to take one home, take a couple home. So everything we do in our accountability campaign, every endorsed candidate, every door we knock tears up to our 2027 legislative agenda, which you also see on your table. That document, I'd like to spend a little time on that because we're fighting to keep more money in the pockets of Montanans, to give parents real and meaningful choice in education for their children. We're fighting to prevent unelected bureaucrats in future administrations from enacting and imposing costly regulations without accountability to the people they govern. To reform our pension system before it becomes even a greater crisis. We have $4.3 billion in unfunded liabilities in our pension system, which we never touch. To allow judicial candidates to declare their party affiliation, because they have the right of free association, and we deserve to know what their core philosophy and principles are. And party affiliation will give us a strong clue. These are not radical ideas. These are common sense proposals. These are kitchen table issues. This is the difference between a family that can make ends meet and those who cannot. So we're fighting for the real thing, and June is our next chance to move the ball down the field. That's just coming up in like 6 or 7 weeks. So let's talk about our express advocacy, where we engage in political activity in support of candidates for office. And like I said before, we're engaging in primaries at a level we've never done in the state. And I'm seeing this tremendous collaboration among groups here in the state of Montana that is unprecedented, because we have had enough. And what I'm about to share is AFP Montana's endorsement of candidates who have demonstrated a genuine commitment to policies that limit government and expand opportunity. They're not perfect people, they're not perfect candidates, they don't exist. But they're aligned, and they can win, and we can help them win. So here are the ones we're engaged in. Senate races, Zach Worth, Representative Zach Worth in Senate District 9. A rancher with true grit, a true Montanan over Representative Lou Jones. The author of HB2, the author of the bad property tax bill, and the de facto leader of the Solutions Caucus. Steve LaPrane, Senate District 42, hardworking, self-made entrepreneur in the high-tech industry, over Mike Talia, a Republican unknown lawyer from that area. Kathy Love, Representative Kathy Love in Senate District 43. She's a hardworking lady. I believe she's runs a business that teaches firearms safety to women. Over Representative Dave Beatty, who scored 65 on our scorecard. In the House side, Trevor Funstead, House District 21, that's Great Falls. Trevor is born and raised in Great Falls. He's an estate attorney. He wants to ensure that young people like himself have a pathway to prosperity in his community in the state of Montana. We endorsed him over Eric Peterson, who is a media guy who served in the Navy for over 30 years. Trish Schreiber in HD 76. Trish is probably the foremost proponent of education freedom in the state of Montana. She's the hardest working, one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And we endorsed her over Representative John Fitzpatrick, another Appropriations Committee member, who scored a 60%. Bear in mind that many of these endorsements that we've made are in very deep red districts. And many of these current legislators who are running for re-election or for a higher seat have never, ever faced a significant primary challenger in all the times they've run for office. This is the first time. Oh, and they are upset that they have to start campaigning early because we got out early. Tough. Linda Harmon, an HD 29 versus Valerie Moore. Representative Valerie Moore, Appropriations Committee member. Linda is hardworking, principled, and she can take that race with the right support. Finley Warden, a young, recently graduated from college, young man who got a lot of courage. For 2 straight years, he went undercover at the Montana Federation of Public Employees training sessions for public educators. And he got on film and got audio of MFEP teaching a woke agenda to our educators, and was able to get that on social media and on mainstream media to literally thousands, if not more than 1 million people. And he decided to run for office, and we're behind him. Over Linda Rexton, the incumbent, who was a former city school administrator up there in the Polson area. Mary Horman, an HD 55, a nurse who serves in Billings and also lives in Red Lodge, versus Representative Brad Barker, who scored a 65%. John South, up in the Havre area, an HD 28. John South is a former Border Patrol agent and a veteran, and he's running against Chisholm Christensen, who is a rancher, leases public lands, and a moderate. Our money's on John South. Tony Rosales versus Representative Melissa Nikolakakis. Tony is a young man. He is a speech and debate coach for a local high school and on the board of a local private school. He will be a far better vote than Melissa, who scored a 48%. Every one of these races is winnable. Every one of these candidates is prepared, and what they need is our help, our voice, and our volunteerism. We'll be there. We have been there. With canvassing, we go door to door. That's our comparative advantage as an organization. We've got teams around the state of Montana, knocking doors, not to just drop off literature and say hello, but we knock doors to win votes. Because as I say, the magic happens when the door opens and you get a chance to speak to a voter and address their concerns. So I want to address something also directly because it's been said about us, and you deserve to hear our answer. At least my answer. Some people in the party say that we are violating Reagan's 11th commandment by engaging in these primaries and by sending out these hard-hitting, eye-catching mailers. I want you to know they're creatively done, and as I mentioned before, they're based on fact. And they're creative because we don't want them thrown out in the wastebasket with the rest of junk mail. We want to get people's attention. Reagan's commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican. Let me be clear, I don't believe in the 11th commandment. I believe in the 10 commandments. And as much as I respect Ronald Reagan, and he served as an inspiration for me to get involved way back in 1980 when I was a student at Columbia University, when I founded Young Americans for Freedom on a left-leaning Ivy League school when I was living in the city. I don't believe in the 11th commandment. And beyond that, Americans for Prosperity is not a political party either. But I believe that we should debate the issues openly, without fear. I believe that we should challenge each other respectfully on our ideas. I believe we should hold each other accountable. And I believe that we should be advancing principles of freedom in a free society. And those who do that get our support. And those who don't, well, we'll hold them accountable when they don't. Or we won't support them if they run for office. And that's our right. We have every right to do that. It's our constitutional right, guys. And we're not going to be intimidated into silence. We're not going to be forced to keep quiet for the sake of getting along. We're not going to adhere to Rodney King's suggestion. Can we all just get along? Well, sometimes we just don't all get along. Sometimes we need to debate it out. So there's been a good amount of false claims made about our organization, but here's what's actually really happening. And I want every person in the room to know this. It's been reported recently, and for me, I found some satisfaction in seeing it finally reported, and that is that progressives are managing the campaigns of the moderate Republicans, many of which we're opposing. Let me repeat that. Progressives are managing the campaigns of moderate Republicans, many of whom we're opposing, with good quality candidates. I'm not speculating, this has been documented. These are the people who run and lead fireweed campaigns, and they're running and managing the campaigns of so-called moderate Republicans in the primaries. Executives at Fireweed and their associates have maxed out their personal contributions too to these candidates. It's all documented in C5 filings with the Montana Commission of Political Practices in the first quarter of 2026. Now, in addition, the so-called Conservatives for Montana PAC received $75,000 from the Trial Lawyers Legislative PAC. So just think about that for a moment, what that means. So these are there's also documented connections with those who are with fireweed campaigns, supporting policies that oppose Americans for Prosperity's judicial reform efforts. They have worked on policies that would oppose principles within the Republican Party. And there is a major disconnect there, and I think people should know that. So for me, it was validation that what we've been doing at Americans for Prosperity since October with our accountability program, we were out early, we were out hard, was validated because we were on target. And what we've been doing since mid-February with our political engagement with strong candidates who are going up against many of these moderates was the right call. It was the right call. It gave me wind in my sails. It gave me tailwinds. It made me feel good. Because sometimes when you're out there early and you're out there alone initially, and when you're taking the hits personally, and you see our organization getting slandered wrongly based on innuendo, mind you, we go after their votes, we go after actionable evidence. As I mentioned earlier, we don't attack a person's character. But we were taking the hits, and we didn't respond because there's no need to. But seeing this, that's sufficient for me. It should be sufficient for all of us here in this room. I don't see how you can justify it. I don't see it personally. That's my personal opinion, not necessarily that of my organization. But in any case, let me tell you what this fight reminds me of. In 2024, not many people thought we could unseat John Tester, 3-time U.S. Senator. He was one-time head of the Democrat National Senatorial Campaign Committee. He's the guy who discovered Kamala Harris, had her run for the U.S. Senate. And, you know, we took a controversial position. I get it. And some of my friends didn't really like it. We supported Tim Sheehy early on. We thought he could win. And we were proven right. And, you know, I heard out all my friends and their concerns. I was understanding of it and compassionate of that too. It was a difficult decision, much like our decision to hold long-term friends accountable. It's not fun, but you got to do what you think is right. And we launched an unprecedented canvassing program that reached over 700,000 Montana households. Granted, many of those households were visited more than one time, which gave us the number of 700,000. our take rate, the percentage of those who actually took our survey was over 22%, which is very high. And Tim Sheehy graciously gives us credit for his win. And that win, my friends, assured us of a policy majority in the U.S. Senate with this current administration. Because we had no guarantee that Dave McCormick or Bernie Moreno or any other Republican senatorial candidate would win. In fact, those two gentlemen only took the lead within the last week or two of their election. We were up for 5 months, and we had that pressure that entire time to maintain that lead as Tester spent millions of dollars in the most expensive U.S. Senate race in the history of this country, per capita, per vote, and per voter. But we prevailed. Which brings me to today, because we need to bring that same tenacity to these races that we're engaged in here in the state of Montana. What we're doing today is as important, if not more important, than what we did last year, because what happens under the dome in Helena, what you gentlemen vote on, has more impact on our daily lives than what goes on in the federal government. And while it is more complicated, it is more difficult, we're finding a way to do it. Because we have to restore our great state of Montana. We have to restore fiscal sanity to the state. So, any case, this is our choice, not in November, but right now, through June. Because most of these races will be decided in the primaries. They'll be decided within the next 6 weeks. And we have the opportunity to create not a Republican majority, but a policy majority. We can get our good bills, which are in our 2027 legislative agenda that's on your table. Real education freedom, real property tax reform by limiting spending, real pension reform, great bills that Montana needs to ensure prosperity. We can do that now within the next 6 weeks. So I tell my team regularly, this is the time. The stakes of Montana are right before us, and this is the time we can make the difference. So we're living in a remarkable time, the 250th anniversary of our great country. It is truly remarkable. And I did ask some of you legislators and former legislators who were at the kickoff to tell us your reason why you even engaged in public service. And I was going to show you the video, but I didn't quite have it together, running around pretty hard these days. But Representative Greg Kmetz told his story of how he got involved during COVID. He called up the local sheriff and said, "Sheriff, are you going to shut down my shop?" He has a welding shop. And the sheriff said, "No, I have no intention on doing that." And that's when Greg realized the importance of being an elected official, because the sheriff defied the directives of the health board and Governor Bullock and allowed Greg to continue with his business. Then we have former State Senator Steve Einbach. I hope I got the numbers right, because they're pretty high. 18 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, with 2 more to come. And his inspiration was to run to ensure that his family still enjoyed the freedom that he had growing up in this great state. And that's what motivates us, guys. We are a citizen legislature. It's a beautiful thing. Not many states have that. Not many states have it where you can go to the Capitol and there's no one running interference between you and your legislator. They're your neighbors. You can talk to them in the hallways. It's part of the culture. It's a beautiful thing. So, any case, we got to ask ourselves, like, what's our contribution to this great country and this remarkable time in which we live? For us, we knock doors. We get out there and we get before voters. You may want to help us do that. You may want to talk to your neighbors and family, your extended family, your friends, and get them out to vote, because it's critical. I can tell you this, the other side is not going to give up or give in. They're fighting hard too, and we have to want it more than they do. in order to win. So, in any case, I just want to close with the freedom we enjoy, the freedom to build a business, raise a family, own property, speak our minds, was purchased at a price by the people who came before us. Our job is to preserve it for people who come after us. That is not a small thing, that is a responsibility. And that is the whole thing, why we do what we do. So I ask you tonight to join us. Take your first step, take your next step in advancing freedom. The time for transforming our state government is now. We will not back down, we will not be silent, and we will not settle for a status quo that fails Montana families. God bless you, God bless Montana, and God bless this great country, the United States of America.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get close to being in here, but I want you to check out these silent auctions over here. There's some really amazing, great things over here. And again,